And we're back, Jonathan.
Another episode of roadtocode.
This is episode 14. Man, how's it been going?
We're going for it. I feel like we can reach 100 by the end of this year. Like
You think we could do? Wait, we're already in May. We only got 14 episodes. How are we gonna reach 100 by the end of the year? We're almost halfway through.
That's true. Yeah.
I was like, wow, are we gonna start recording like twice a week now?
Well, maybe we have episode 10, cut it up into separate parts. It could happen.
That is true, because episode 10 came out to be 5 parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So technically, we're episode 21 if we hadn't broken that up. Cool. So let's talk about the merch that's available.
Yes.
You want to bring that up?
Oh, yeah.
Remind people that we got merch. Where can they find it if they want to buy some merch?
So on Teespring, we have our merch.
And Teespring is spelled TEESPRING.com, right?
Yep.
And how do they find it? Can you open up an incognito window?
Okay.
So hit the little 3 dots over at the end and open up an incognito and go to teespring.com. And how do they find? But in the meantime,
you can go to my store
-11726934934.creator-spring.com. And in the meantime, we'll be working on that domain to get that to work correctly. And so, but the good news is that you don't have to buy it because
we are doing a giveaway.
That's right.
For our subscribers.
That's right. And so you get your choice of coffee mug, tote bag, men's t-shirt or women's classic tee for free. And the way to enter the raffle is to subscribe. And do we say leave a comment?
I don't think we said leave a comment. Just like the video and subscribe.
That's right. Like the video. That's right. So you have to subscribe and you have to like one of our videos, and that will enter your name into a raffle that started on June 1st, let's just say. Or I think we said May 30th. I forget which one it was, but we go based on weeks. And so essentially for the month of June, if you subscribe and you liked one of our videos, it will enter your name into a raffle. And on the last week of June, is it like June 27th or something?
Yeah.
We will pick your name out of a hat, or we're actually going to write a little program that's going to randomize some numbers and some names, and we'll assign a number and some names, and this program will pick your name, and we're going to do this all on air. And if we get one subscriber who liked one of our videos, that computer program is not going to have much of randomization to do. We may not even have to write it at that point. So if you don't want to let that one person take your merchandise, go ahead and subscribe and like one of our videos.
And get a free Road to Code merch.
That's right.
Official.
Official. Cool. All right. You want to stop sharing?
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, so don't forget the giveaway. So Jonathan, let's talk a little bit about when you got started with the web development. I mean, we've been talking about it here and there, but we didn't really talk about the resources that you used in order to get started with web development.
Right? Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. When you first embarked on this mission, we talked about let's take advantage of all the free resources out there. And what were some of the free resources that you took advantage of?
Yeah. So for like the basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, a lot of the stuff was on Code Academy for free. They have some short little lessons on there that you can go through. There's actually a lot more other stuff too that you could learn for free, but like I just did the CSS, HTML, JavaScript. Um,
And don't mistake with the fact that Code Academy is free, because there are some paid things in there, right?
mhm.
Yeah, there's stuff that you do need to pay, and there's even like some advanced stuff with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that if you want to continue learning about it, you can continue to pay. But the whole reason I told you just to do the free stuff is because there's only so much learning you can do before you have to start working with it. Otherwise, you're just not going to learn anything,
Mm-hmm.
because unless you struggle with it, you're not going to learn it. You know, that's just it. Like, you can sit there and do all the studying you want, but you got to start using it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that the free portion of it gave you enough of a foundation for you to start working with it. So we didn't stop there. There was things that I had to do that went beyond the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because there were things that I wanted to be able to see. I wanted to be able to see your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was another resource?
Easy resource that help you share some of your codes and stuff like that is GitHub. And I went through a little GitHub training that you created.
That's right. Yeah. And we've been talking about having me publish it. And I think what I want to do is I actually want to remake that video and make it a little bit more official, because this was really targeted for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just like, Jonathan, click here, Jonathan, click there, type this in, and if you get this, then do that type of thing, right? But so it wasn't like completely official, but it gave you enough to be able to start working with GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all command line, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It,
pretty crazy. Yeah,
it
first time
actually,
command line too.
yeah. It introduced you to the command line. You thought you were in the Matrix. You thought you were one of the operators on the Nebuchadnezzar. So, you had the gloves with the cutoff tips and the whole thing, just typing away.
For tactical reasons, you have to have the gloves with the fingers cut off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remake this video and post it on YouTube, and it'll be a good way to get people to work. And essentially what I did was just talk about the main features that you would use during development, right? Which is basically go and create a repository, clone the repository to your machine, be able to create a branch, be able to submit a pull request, approve a pull request, and then merge it into the main or master. You know, now they're calling them main. They're taking the master word away, but now they're calling it main.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so you're able to merge into the main branch. And that particular cycle, believe it or not, that's like, I would say 90% of any development that you're going to do, that's where you're at. And so learning that is very important. There is going to be like that 10% that is also very important. Don't get me wrong, but they have their own uses. And within a development cycle, they're used very, very little bit. You know, they're not used a whole lot. And so I felt this like giving you the meat and potatoes of, you know, the usage of Git. you became very proficient with the command line.
Yeah, it gets you really comfortable with it. Like you're not afraid. I thought I was gonna be afraid of the command line forever, but like I got comfortable. It's pretty easy
Yeah,
navigating a computer now.
yeah, exactly. And then we actually started doing Git repo management within Visual Studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so you no longer use the command line, you're using Visual Studio. But because you were using the command line, when you started using Visual Studio, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do this just with the click of a button, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, this is so much easier. Dad, why did you teach me this way? And the whole thing is because it's too easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's too easy. And you wouldn't understand exactly what it's doing behind the scenes, because when you're cloning, when you're creating a branch, when you're um, committing your code and you're pushing it to the server, and then you go and create a PR, a pull request, and you approve it. Those are all individual steps, where Visual Studio, it takes care of like 2 or 3 steps at a time for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot faster. But the problem is that, like, I knew you were going to be missing the big picture. And I was like, no, I'm going to make them suffer through it. And I'm going to make them learn the command line. And yeah, sorry, Jonathan, you have to do it. But you got comfortable with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was the thing. So yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like maybe a multi-part video or tutorial about Git and how to get comfortable with that development lifecycle and stuff. So yeah, that was kind of cool. What other tools did you use that were free resources to learn?
I also used the GitHub and Azure Development Ops,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah,
pretty.
for the Git repos, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
And then also Google Chrome tools tutorials; those help as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I mean, a lot of that is just a bunch of reading, but without that, it's like, how do you learn how to debug a website?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be something that eventually we're going to be doing once we get into some web development. Right now, we're in the web API stage, right? Where we're just kind of interchanging data with a web server. But eventually, when we start creating that website, we're going to have to interact with the browser, and we're going to have to be able to debug our code on the browser. And
Mm-hmm.
so the Google Chrome tools are a great use for that. You can step through your code, you can examine variables. There's all kind of stuff. And it's also a great way to see how the code is working and what it actually does within the browser itself. So I think in one of our first episodes, if it wasn't the first episode, it probably was the second one, where we talked about when you display data on a browser, using HTML to format your data in such a way, but then you have to use CSS to style it. And although like a lot of this is really simple, basic, it's like HTML, it's like what it's doing in the back end is that it actually has to activate and interact with your graphics card
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to display the colors, the font size, the type of font it is, where it displays within the browser, all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on under the hood that you don't realize. And it's really easy to demonstrate that within the development tools that come with Chrome. Chrome gives you the ability to like, hey, when you're updating this, here's what's exactly happening. It gives you like graphic information, it gives you memory information, it gives you processor information as to what it takes to be able to just make a little change using JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually we're going to get into that and using those particular tools. But yeah, that Google Chrome tool tutorials, that's a great way to learn about that as well. What about tools? We talked about resources. What about tools?
Yeah, so some of the free tools that are out there are Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition.
Mm-hmm. And then for database stuff,
We are using the free SQL Server Developer Edition.
yeah, that's a free download from Microsoft. It gives you the full blown database to work on your local machine for development purposes. But everything that you get with like the standard or enterprise version of SQL Server, you get it within the development. The only difference between the development edition and these like professional edition or advanced server editions is the license. You cannot run it on a production server.
Mhm.
You can run it on a dev server all day long, every day, 24 hours. It doesn't matter how many processors you have. It doesn't matter how much memory you have. It's like you can use it for free for development purposes. And there's plenty of training material out there. A lot of it is not free. I mean, at some point you got to pay for it. You got to start, once you get past the basics and you start doing things, eventually you're going to have to pay to be able to understand a lot of this stuff a lot more. And there's been a couple of things that you've had to pay for. It's like, so not all your training's been 100% free. You've had, to pay for a couple of things. And so eventually that's what it comes down to. But it's still a drop in the bucket compared to a computer science degree, a drop in the bucket compared to a coding boot camp.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that stuff gets pretty pricey, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get a job, and at the end of the day, a university and a coding boot camp, they're both businesses. They're not in it for you, to benefit from. Obviously, that's the intention, is that you benefit from these programs, but there's no guarantee that you're going to benefit from it. What they want is your money. And so the less money you can put out of your pocket, the better, and you get a lot out of it, the better off you're going to be when you start working. It's basically you become self-taught at that point. And believe it or not, for some employers, that is far more impressive than the prestigious university you got your degree from, or the prestigious coding boot camp that you get, that you completed. They're far more impressed. It's like, whoa, wait a second. You learned all this on your own? It's like, yeah, it's pretty good. And I don't think anybody ever learns things on their own. There's always some, even myself, I've had mentors that I followed very closely. And every moment that I had when I would meet with them, I would pick their brains dry. I was like, give me all your knowledge, and it was just, if they showed up in town and they spoke, I was there. If they were consulting for a company I was at, I would make sure I was in that project. I don't care if I had to work overtime and for free. I was there, It was like, that was, I just knew that they had knowledge that I wanted and needed in order to advance in my career. And so, but yeah, I think every person has that mentor that they grab all the information from, in order to be able to advance their career and stuff. So that's kind of cool. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit about where we came from to end up where we're at right now. We did a database with one table, and that one table contains birthdays, and they're significant birthdays. They're mostly dealing with people who would influence the technology industry, right? And so we created 4 stored procedures, or actually 5, I think. Get all, get by ID, create, an update, and a delete store procedure. And then we created a console application that displayed some, a little interface on the console,
Mhm.
You click, A, C, B, U, in order to be able to do that, and you enter the information.
Mhm.
And then we went and wrote the code that actually updated the database. In the last episode, we converted that console application into a web API, and we're using Swagger UI to be able to utilize that. We can also use Postman. Postman is perfectly viable tool that we can use. And I think we have a short, roadtocode short, that talks about how to download it, how to install it, and how to work with it and stuff. But because we came from a console application, that console application behaved a little bit different than what a API endpoint should work like. Let me share my screen. So if we look at our API, right? The API itself. By the way, have you pushed that code to GitHub?
Ooh, no, I haven't yet.
Maybe we should push that code. You want to share your screen, show people how you're doing that?
All right.
Cool. So let's look at the API. And we're going to go into the controllers and the birthday controller. And so the birthday controller, remember that if we look at this documentation, right, where it says, here's the API, the get represents the HTTP action. In other words, there's a standard when you're working with APIs, right? Get and posts are the most popular that you're going to be working with when it comes to working with anything web development. So when we go and get all the birthdays, we're going to call this resource called API/birthdate, right? So let's look at your code and see where that comes from. Here is the class for the birthdate controller. And this is the route that is being used to get to this controller. So it's API, and then inside of brackets, they have the controller. But what happens is that controller inside the brackets gets replaced with birth date. It drops the controller portion of the name. Okay. So if we go back to the documentation, API birth date is the get method. That get method is based on this HTTP action. So there's our put, there's our post, there's our delete, there's our one get, and here's a second get. So you can have more than one of these HTTP actions, but the resource has to be different. So here's one with nothing. It's just get all birthdays, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's represented in this documentation as, hey, just go to that resource, API/birthday. So whatever your domain is, it could be localhost, it could be significant.com, whatever it is, /API/birthday would get you all the birthdays. In other words, it's going to call this particular method. And we could see here that we're going to go out, get all the birthdays, and return an OK response. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we return back a status code of 500 if there's some kind of catastrophic error that occurs. The second one is get API/birthdays/ and then some kind of ID. That's represented by this second method. This second method is also an HTTP GET, but if you take this API/controller, and this controller, we know that it's this button, and then we attach / ID, or in this case, it's birth date ID. Now we have this type of documentation where we're just going to pass in some kind of numeric value. And through all the mapping, the framework figures out, oh, this is the method that you want to call now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes through and it calls this method called get record by ID. And it passes in the integer birth date ID. And then you return one birth date. All right. And then you have the post, which adds a new birth date. And then what you're going to get back, or what you need to pass in, is you need to pass in the birth date create request, which is a particular object that has all the information in order to create a birth date in the database. And then you get back the birth date that was created. However, if we look at the code right now for this post, where's it at? Here we go. We're not returning anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're just returning an OK. One of the standards of a post is that whatever resource you create, that's the same resource that you're going to send back as a response. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. Like
So remember, we're using this birthday create request, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go look at, let me open up in a new window. And actually I need to go back one. And I think it's under models. We created a request called birthday create request.
Mm-hmm.
And this right here has all the information that we need in order to create a birth date. So that means that we need to send this to the method and say, hey, you're going to add a full name, you're going to add a date of birth, a date of death, and the notoriety, why this person deserves to be in the significant birth date database.
Mm-hmm.
When we respond, we're going to respond with the birth date response. And this birth date response is based off of the birth date request. So this birth date response has created that, updated that. And if we look at the birth date update request, where was the birth date update request? I think it's going to be part of the requests. Update request, here we go. It also has an ID. And this derives from birth date create. So let's go back to birth date create. It has the rest of the fields: full name, date of birth, date of death, and notoriety. So all that put together is what you should be sending back as a response. So you only provide the full name, the date of birth, the date of death, and notoriety, and you get back the ID, the created at, and the updated field along with that. And that gives you the response. And that's really what we should be sending back to the response, which is indicated here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a standard. This is something that every API should follow. You just don't go and add something and don't send anything back. We did it because that's just the way our console application worked. You know, we kept it simple, but now that we need to go and create it, now we need to do this. But not only do we send back the object that we created, we also send back the resource. In other words, whatever is in here, we need to send back this address along with the response of this post. So when we added, not only do we send back the object that was created in the database, we also give them the resource, the URL that says, and you can find this object at this resource. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let me stop sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and let you share some code, or the project actually.
All right.
And what we need to do is we need to modify the post itself. So go ahead and expand line 29. In order to make the modification that we need, we also need to modify everything else that went downstream, because nothing is returning the information that we need.
All right.
Sadly. So let's go ahead and right click on that create and go to the implementation. And expand line 23. And right click on the create and go to the implementation and expand line 48. Right here. So the problem that we have is that we're executing a non-query. And this is not the database fault. This is just the way we decided to do things, right? We said, hey, go and insert this data and don't worry about anything else. And so we're like, well, no, we need to worry about it because we need to go and grab that information. So we actually need to go modify the stored procedure. So the stored procedure is on line 52, which is birth dates insert. So let's go to SQL Server. Go ahead and fire up SQL Server, or I should say SQL Server Management Studio. And let's go into programmability.
Okay.
And start procedures. And so we need to do the insert. We need to right click on the insert and modify. Oh, wait a second. Don't you have a file on this saved? I think you do. Go to the file open.
File open.
Yeah.
Sure.
No. Up at the menu, file open. And we're going to open up a file. Yeah. And so birthday cruds. So go to the folder birthday cruds. And we should have the birthday inserts. Yep, birthday inserts. Yeah, this is what we want to monitor. So close the other tab. So the reason I wanted to do this because the other one actually just had an alter. Here we have create or alter on line 1. So if it doesn't exist, it'll create it. If it does exist, then it'll just update it. And so we have that capability there. We need to add 2 things. One is a parameter. So on line 2, let's start a new line. Actually, you're going to want line 2 to be line 3. Go ahead and tab in there to line it up. And let's put the @ sign. And we're going to go ahead and say ID, capital I, lowercase d. And then this is going to be an int, because remember, we have to specify the types. So this is going to be all caps int. And we need to specify one more thing on that line 2. We need to specify the type of variable that this is. And by default, all variables are inbound variables. In other words, they're being passed in to the stored procedure so that you can use them. So you can see here on line 3, 4, 5, and 6, we're using those variables, or those parameters, I should say, on line 16, 17, 18, and 19, right? But the variable on line 2, which is the ID, which is an integer, that's not an inbound variable. That's actually going to be an outbound variable. So follow it up with the keyword out. And let's change the name from Adam Osborne to, I don't know, what was one of the birthday names that we recently spoke about?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Oops.
We say he was born 1984, May 14. '84.
Oh, 84.
I remember it was the year I graduated from junior high.
Oh, yeah.
Not to date myself. And
06, 14.
Yep, 0514. We're in May.
Ooh.
2 days ago was his birthday.
Wow.
And then you can go ahead and pass in a null for the date of death. So get rid of the quotes and everything and just pass in all caps null, N-U-L-L. And then he's known for Facebook, or the original name, the Facebook.
Facebook. There we go.
Yeah, let's Control E and let's watch this go. So according to the insert, he's ID number 15. So we should be able to go ahead and do a Control O and open up the select by ID test. And put in 15 instead of the 2.
There it is.
Control E.
Whoa, cool.
So now we're getting that information. We said, okay, hey, now when you insert a record, we're going to give you that ID back that we created for you so that you can go and retrieve it. So the whole purpose of being able to create something is that it's telling you where it's at. From the database perspective, when you insert a new record, it says, oh, by the way, here's the new ID.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you that ID so that you can go and grab it. You notice that we blindly came into select by ID and we just plugged in the 15. We're like, okay, that's the ID that they told us that is now his ID. And we brought it up. So we need to do the same thing all the way up to the API. In the API, when you call create, when you do the post, it not only gives you the object, it also gives you the resource. It says, hey, you can go and get this resource based on this URL. So in our okay, there's a couple of things we could do. One of them is we could say okay, and then just return the response. So if you just go ahead and type in RESP in there. Let's go ahead and save all this and run it, and let's see what that gives us. So exciting.
Swagger.
So let's go and get a birth date based on the ID. And let's go grab Mark Zuckerberg.
Try it out. There it is.
So there's all his information. So let's highlight that and copy it.
The URL?
No, the response body.
Okay.
Yeah, everything end to end. Copy that puppy. So let's go up to the no, stay inside the Swagger API. Let's go up to the post Is Mark Zuckerberg married?
I think so.
Let's see who he's married. He's married to Priscilla Shane. So we're gonna go ahead and paste his information on there.
Okay.
Yeah, just override the whole thing. And you can get rid of the created at and updated at. So you can get rid of those too. And get rid of the ID. And so this is Priscilla, Priscilla. And her last name is Chan, like Jackie Chan. And her date of birth is February 24th, 1985. And wife of Mark Zuckerberg. Execute that. Oh, what happened?
Non-query.
This is good. I like this. Birth dates insert expects a parameter ID which was not supplied. Oh, that was so dumb of me. Okay. Before, go ahead and copy that response body, the request body. Sorry, yeah, copy that. And open up Notepad and stick it in there. Hit no. We'll update later. Yeah, so we'll just save that, put it on the side for now. That's fine. And let's go back to Visual Studio and go ahead and let's stop this. I know what I did wrong. So we created the parameter, but we never added the parameters to the list of parameters. So after line 57,
Okay.
command parameters dot add, and instead of add with value, it's just add. And then open parenthesis, and then put in P. And then close it with the semicolon. So we actually created the parameter, but we forgot to add it to the list of parameters. So
Okay.
Let's run it again. Let's try that post, and you should be able to paste that JSON object that you just created. Execute. Did we get to 200? We got the 200, and we got the record.
There it
and
is.
Her ID is 16. So that's kind of cool, right? But one of the things that it needs is, how do we access? So the only way for us to know that this record exists is because we see the ID 16, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if we didn't know where to go access this resource? We know because it's on Swagger, and Swagger gives us all the API endpoints, right? And you and I know, based on the documentation that Swagger is giving us, is that we need to go use the get. But if you're using something like Postman, Postman doesn't give you the documentation. You have to know all the endpoints. And in order for you to know where to go get this record, we need to give it, we need to tell them, it's like, hey, here's the endpoint. Here's the resource you can use to go and grab this record. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to Visual Studio. Go ahead and stop the execution. And let's go to the controller. And instead of returning an OK, let me share my screen for a moment.
Okay.
There is a gentleman by the name of Roy Fielding. He's Doctor of Philosophy, and he explains the whole architecture and design of network-based software. So he talks about RESTful APIs. So in here is a great read if you ever have problems sleeping at night to understand what was the purpose of creating RESTful APIs. And this was written back in, I think it was earlier than 2000. I think he's updated it since then. I think it was actually 1991, his original desertion. So the technology that you're currently using right now is all based on this desertion that was written in 1991.
Wow.
So you can see how slow the web changes.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't change very often. Now he's probably updated since then, which is why you get the 2000, right? But his original desertion was written in early 90s. In there, it talks about, is this it? Yeah, this is it. It talks about what you need to do with return values. And there is a tutorial here. I'll just go to the top here. And it's on the Microsoft documentation, so docs.microsoft.com. And it takes you through a tutorial of creating a web API using ASP.NET Core, which is exactly what we're using. And they go through and, they have some prerequisites of creating the data models and all this good stuff. But if we skip all the way down to, this is all scaffold. Okay, so here we go, scaffolding the controller. So if we're gonna update, then they're using, instead of us using a birthday, they're using to-do items, right? And they're doing a post. But they're actually returning a create action name of get to-do item, and then they're sending back the new ID and then the actual item itself. Okay. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to send this over to you. Let's see. Let me stop sharing. Let me put this in the chat. Yeah, so let's create a new line after 32. And then let's paste it in, but as a comment. So put a // just to create a comment and then paste it in there. All right, so instead of return OK response, let's do return create action item. Or create at action. Yeah, there you go.
Name of.
And the name of is going to be the name of your controller. So here, give me 1 second. Let me go back to that article for a moment. Who is it doesn't show who she's related to. Let's pick another name.
Let's do Orson Welles.
Orson Welles it is.
All right. So it's going to be 1937. October is 10. War of the Worlds.
Oh, that's right. Gotta download that book.
All right.
Let's run it. Okay, so you look at right above. Oh, we got a 400. What's going on here? One or more validation errors occurred. The JSON value cannot be converted to a system nullable. Date time, date of birth. Let me look at your value that you sent in. (1937) 5/6. I wonder if you have to put an 06 in there. Oh, did it? Yeah, try 06. Try that. Ooh, whoa. No route matches the supplied value. So here's an interesting thing. So you notice how we got one error and then we fixed it and we got another error. So a lot of people get discouraged when they start like, man, it's like another error. It's like, what the heck? Where you don't realize that this error has always been there. It's just that it was a previous error that happened before this error. So this error didn't get displayed. So you're actually fixing things as you go. So you're chipping away at what you're trying to do, and you're getting closer to the result. Does that make sense? So this is good. Now it says no route matches the supplied value. Let me do a quick search for that. Okay. So I'm guessing that, let me check one more thing here. Okay, let's go ahead and close this browser. Oh, before you do that, let's go and grab that that data that you got in there, put it in your notepad. Let's save that so we don't have to type that in again. Okay, and let's close the browser when you're done with that. On line 51, after the second double quote, but before the parenthesis, put a comma. And type in name. Name equals. And in here, we're going to say get birth date by ID. It has to be inside of double quotes.
Okay.
And okay, yeah, it seems to like it. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab the double quotes, get birthday by ID, and then the double quotes. And then paste it in place of name of get birthday by ID.
The whole thing?
Yeah, just replace it. So now what we're saying is, hey, this method called get birthday by ID, when we go and post it, use that method and go and figure out what is the URL to go and return based on that name. So you're kind of doing like a double mapping type of thing. Internally, the framework figures it out. You're just giving it a friendly name and you're saying, hey, go and look for this name of this method, and here's the ID, and here's the response object. Let's go try that, see if that works.
No. Oh,
Let's see what is the error that we're getting. No route matches the supplied values. What's interesting, okay. Let's go ahead and stop this. Let's see here. Let's put a breakpoint on line 32 so that we can debug it. So you go all the way to the gray. And then let's go ahead and run it. And go ahead and step over this.
step over. F10.
Okay, so let's go ahead and hover over RESP. And let's make sure that we got all our values in there. Go ahead and expand that.
What?
Oh no, just hover over it. Yeah, there you go. So we have everything that we need. Okay, cool. And then, so the ID is 20. ID. Oh, I get it. I get it. You see the ID on line 34, instead of ID, we need to put birth date ID as it shows on line 51.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead and stop this and then replace ID with that. You can copy and paste it, so make sure it's spelled right. I believe that it's looking for the full signature of the method and says like, hey, yeah, you got this method, but it doesn't take an ID. And it doesn't know that you mean by ID, you meant birth date ID. So let's try that again.
Yeah.
Yay! Okay, now we should have right there. You see where it says location, third line in the response headers? The black box below?
Okay.
You see where it says location? Copy that location and paste it on a new tab. Paste it in there. Hey!
We got the URL.
We got the URL, and when you go and visit that URL, you can get the result of what you've created.
Cool.
You see that? So that's the proper way of working with web APIs, is that just like your database is giving you something back, the web API piece also has to give something back. Not only does it give back the object that you created, it also has to give the resource where it's located. Where can you find this resource? So you get those two pieces in case you need to create some kind of link or URL or something within your UI. You don't have to go and search for that. It's just like, oh, it's all coming part of the package. Not only do you get the object, you get like, hey, if you plug in this resource somewhere, you'll get the object. The same object that I just gave you, that's where you'll get it from. And so that's kind of how the proper way of working with these web APIs. This is the way it should be. And so it's kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a good place to pause for this. I think there's a lot of good content in here. This is probably one of the most complicated pieces of creating a post, is that you have to have a resource to go back to. We've made some changes. We have to keep in mind that our console app no longer works at this time. Maybe at some point, what I want to go back to is talk about how we can change our console application to take advantage of everything that we've taken advantage of in this API, in this web API application. And so there's a way to do that. I did write an article of how to actually do that. And so what I might have you do is just go ahead and put that article as part of the comments in YouTube.
Yeah.
In fact, let me give you that URL, and I'll put it right in the chat here. I think that wraps it up for this episode. Any closing thoughts? Any closing words?
Let's get this website going.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you finishing up at least getting far enough into the React training that you're doing to be able to do the simple UI that would allow us to update. And we'll open it up. We'll let everybody go and start putting data in there and see what we get. Probably half of the stuff's gonna break, watch. But we'll let people go ahead and put in significant birthdays on there. And so cool. I guess until next time.
We'll see you next time on the road to code.
All right.